Hello and welcome back to Disney Journey. I'm retired Imagineer Jim Shull, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, a film franchise that came basically out of nowhere in the 1980s to, well, lend itself as a theme to not one, but three attractions in the Disney parks.
The first time that guests could experience anything from the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise was not an attraction, however. It was a scene. It was a very important scene, but it was part of a scene in the Disney MGM Studios Backlot Tram Tour. Now, the Tram Tour was advertised as part of the entire reason for this studio. It was the opportunity for guests to go behind the scenes to understand how movies and television shows were made. After getting off the bus, they'd start marching through sound stages and production studios. And their first stop inside a building was to experience the world of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The success of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was unexpected, although perhaps in hindsight it shouldn't have been, because Joe Johnston, the director, had a lot of great credits, and the film spawned franchises, even a TV show. Through the movies and the TV show, the premise was always the same. There was a shrink cannon, it would hit someone, and something would happen. But the things that happened provided great opportunities to tell stories and have experiences. The Backlot Tour was engaging, although presented challenges because it was a 1-hour tour. And there are many a family member who suddenly cut out of the tour because, well, Junior needed a potty break.
When it opened, the water tank sky wall was painted as a beautiful blue sky. And later on, well, powers that be decide that was not fitting the mood that they wanted to evoke. So it was repainted as a stormy sky.
It didn't matter whether the sky wall was bright and cheerful or dark and stormy. The path behind it led to the creature shop, where some guests could ride the giant bee from the movie. However, as good as it was, something bigger was on the horizon. Artwork was prepared, drawings done, tenders were made, and construction began on the Honey, I Shrunk the Kid movie set adventure. This area was very small, but it was very dense, and it really did make it appear that guests had suddenly stepped onto the movie itself. Now, given the fact this was a studio, the corners were exposed. You could have exposed lights and sky walls and dining facilities and structural steel and all the above. But it really didn't matter because it was different, it was new, and it was fun. There were multiple entrances, but this is my favorite because it was cut out of an existing backlot wall. No matter how you got in, once inside, you stepped onto the movie set, with a lot of the usual suspects suddenly making their appearance, such as the ant that the kids rode, or slides, or toys. It was interesting, and it also was an opportunity for participants to the company to make their presence known. Corporate branding was a revolving door, and in time, it went away.
The dog nose was an iconic element in the movie, and so it moved from sketch to design to production to installation there in Florida.
There were challenges to bring the movie set adventure to life. The blades of grass had to be designed and engineered to withstand Florida winds. The rubberized surface that looked like dirt had to be created. But the movie set adventure closed because the land on which it was set had another purpose. It was going to be the home of 2 new lands there at the studio. So we lost the movie set adventure, but we were going to gain something else. Theaters are part of the mix of attractions in the Disney theme parks, and the company has a lot of theaters and always has throughout all of their parks. And when Epcot Center opened, they had a large theater located in the Journey into Imagination. As a theater, it served a lot of purposes, but mostly it was a showcase for, well, Kodak film, Kodak Technologies. The theater would feature magic journeys, a show that I think defined the 1980s. It was trippy. I remember watching it the very first time there, and I thought, my goodness, are we sure this is a Disney park? It was more of a fever dream than it was a story. It was a sense that this was an opportunity for Kodak to taste their advanced technologies. It was more a case of look what we can do, not what we can say. Honey had something to say, and it could bring a story along to boot. And it would reactivate a theater which had become non-preferred capacity. Inside the lightly themed Imagination Institute, people would be introduced to a show where Eric Idle, and story goes that he was the second choice to be the host, would present the Inventor of the Year. Of course, something would go horribly wrong, and shenanigans would ensue. But what was clever about it was that the shenanigans happened to you, the guest. And so the entire audience was shrunk, which the mischievous child proudly showed off. The theater movement was accomplished differently than what had been done before. For example, on Star Tours, Star Tours achieved its experience by the use of a simulator. It had pitch and yaw and tilt and drop and lift. That range of dynamic motion was not required for Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. They just simply need a up and down, back and forth. And that was done not with hydraulics, but with airbags. These were a set of specialized airbags that were mounted to structural steel members and to the concrete floor. When they were given a trigger, they would signal the floor would be lifted by the inflatable airbags and then drop. The effects and the floor made Honey a success, which caught the eye of another park, Tomorrowland, there in Anaheim, California. Tomorrowland 2055 had died, but New Tomorrowland was reborn. And that project team, which I was a part of, looked around for something to put in the old Captain EO Theater.
Working as a creative director for Honey, I Shrunk the Audience in Anaheim, there were only two things that I wanted, things I was willing to fall on my sword to get. One of them was the logo for the Imagination Institute, and the other one was the shrink cannon. I only got one.
Soon another theater in a different park that had also had Captain EO as its star was about to receive Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. And of course, I'm talking about Disneyland Paris. Now, Disneyland Paris in Discoveryland had this theater. And granted, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience wasn't really a logical fit for the world of Jules Verne. But this was a park that needed attractions. And Honey, I Shrunk the Audience was a cheap, cheerful, and quick way to put a big attraction into a park. And just like all the other Honeys, it also was a success. And therefore, like the others, it got the attention of yet again another Disney park. Now this one was, of course, Tokyo Disneyland. And they had a really interesting story because their theater was there on the main drag. The prime location of the theater was fantastic to draw guests into Captain EO. However, just like the other Captain EOs, it had started to suffer an attendance drop. But it did have a theater, and it had a theater very, very similar to the ones in Anaheim and in Paris. And thus, it was a perfect candidate to get Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Oh, wait, I mean Micro Adventure, because Honey, I Shrunk the Kids just didn't really translate. Movies have a shelf life, and so it was with Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. In each of the theaters that it used to occupy, they've been transformed to feature other franchises or events, or they've just been turned dark. It really doesn't matter though, because I think the important thing was it shows how a franchise can be so important to the Disney company, a franchise that comes out of nowhere. Now, perhaps the franchise of Honey will be reborn. There's been noise about it, and maybe it'll come to pass. But until then, we have our memories.
Well, that brings this journey to an end. There'll be another one real soon, and I hope you can join me. Until the next time then, it's goodbye from Lost Canyon.